In the spring of 2025, the world's most visited museum stood as a symbol of art, culture, and human achievement. The Louvre, perched in the heart of Paris, housed treasures spanning millennia, from the Mona Lisa to artifacts older than many modern nations. Yet among its priceless exhibits were jewels and regalia that shimmered with a different kind of allure: wealth, royalty, and history embedded in rare gemstones and centuries-old craftsmanship. These were not merely artifacts. They were icons, treasures that embodied power and prestige. And on one spring day in 2025, they became the target of one of the most audacious thefts in modern memory. Most visitors come to the Louvre for beauty. They linger over brushstrokes and ancient sculpture. But on that day, four men saw something else entirely: opportunity masked as tradition, history as profit, and security as an obstacle to be overcome. No alarm bells, no frantic chase, no cinematic explosion. Instead, what happened was deceptively clinical. It was precision, execution, and timing. A heist planned with cold calculation and performed with near military discipline. On the morning of the robbery, security personnel completed their routine checks. Cameras hummed quietly. Guards walked their assigned routes. Visitors milled through vast corridors lit by skylights and stained glass. On the outside, Paris hummed with the usual cadence of street vendors, cafe conversations, and tourists snapping photos of ornate facades. But inside, something much darker was about to unfold. 8:43 a.m. According to later reconstructions, four individuals entered the museum with documentable visitor passes, identity cards, security badges, or perhaps forged credentials that allowed them past the initial checkpoints. Two onlookers. They could have been researchers, docents, or even guests invited for a special tour. Museum staff would later describe them as calm, polite, and unremarkable, a critical detail that investigators would return to again and again. Unlike the cinematic notion of a nighttime robbery under cover of darkness, this heist was executed in broad daylight. The perpetrators moved methodically, almost imperceptibly, as though they belonged in the marble halls and Doric columns. It was as if they were part of the museum's pulse, ordinary until the moment they were anything but. By the time the guards realized something was wrong, it was too late. They reached a private exhibition wing where the Louvre's crown jewels, an assemblage of ceremonial pieces, rare gemstones, and royal insignia were displayed under glass cases designed to endure impact and vibration. Yet, in under 8 minutes, the thieves had smashed or manipulated those defenses, extracted dozens of highly valuable items, and walked away before many visitors even processed what was happening. The first alarm was not triggered by force. Instead, it was a silent alert from a motion sensor that finally registered movement outside normal parameters. Security cameras, or so the system believed, picked up unusual activity. But the thieves had anticipated this. They moved in such a coordinated fashion that redundant systems were confused, producing delayed response times. In moments, the thieves had vanished into the labyrinth of galleries, exits, and corridors that defined the world's most famous museum. What makes this robbery extraordinary is not just the value of what was taken, estimated at over 88 million euros, around $100 million USD, but the manner in which it was done. No shootout, no forced entry, no dramatic confrontation. Instead, infiltration, disguise, timing, and flawless exit strategies. In the hours that followed, museum officials were in shock. CCTV footage was reviewed frame by frame. Security logs showed gaps in coverage. The thieves had exploited blind spots, altered sensor parameters, and most troubling of all, may have possessed insider knowledge of Louvre protocols. When the police finally locked down the scene, investigators discovered something unsettling. The Louvre's internal communication systems were overridden in the moments leading up to the robbery. Digital logs were tampered with, video feeds rerouted, and timestamps altered. Whoever orchestrated this knew not only the physical layout of the museum, but also the digital architecture that protected it. It was a crime that seemed as much a breach of cybersecurity as it was of human trust. International headlines exploded within hours. Parisian authorities called it one of the most significant museum thefts in modern history. Security analysts worldwide scrambled to reassess vulnerabilities in cultural institutions. News commentators speculated on inside jobs, professional crews, and organized criminal networks with global reach. Amateur sleuths pored over every pixel of CCTV footage released to the public. Social media erupted with theories, accusations, and speculation about motive and mastermind. Some pundits suggested professional thieves with no interest in notoriety, but with an eye toward distributing stolen artifacts to private collectors, individuals for whom moral consideration is eclipsed by exclusivity and secrecy. Others proposed that the jewels were never meant to be sold in the open market, but instead traded in underworld networks that traffic in items too famous to be openly resold. Museum leadership faced fierce scrutiny. Security protocols once believed impenetrable were now questioned on world stages. There were public inquiries, resignations, and immediate calls for reform. Yet amid the chaos, there was a stark question that hung over everything. How could a museum, famed for centuries of stewardship of humanity's greatest treasures, be infiltrated with such precision? What security failures had enabled this? And did the thieves truly act without inside help? By the time investigators began arresting suspects, several weeks had passed. Local police announced that 4 individuals had been taken into custody in connection with the heists, 2 in Paris, 1 in Marseille, and another at an airport attempting to flee abroad. Each arrest came with dramatic images: plainclothes officers moving through train stations, tactical units surrounding apartments, and forensic teams collecting evidence from unmarked residences. Initial court filings alleged involvement of an organized crew with international ties. Some investigators hinted at links to high-value theft rings operating across Europe and Asia, networks that target art, antiquities, and luxury goods with surgical precision. But even as arrests were made, major questions remained unanswered. Most of the stolen jewels were not recovered. Display cases in the Louvre remained shattered reminders of the audacity of the crime, and the men in custody had yet to lead authorities to the missing crown jewels. To the world, the arrests seemed like progress. But to seasoned investigators, it was only the beginning of a far more complex puzzle. Who planned the heist? Was it truly executed by only 4 men? Or was there a benefactor, someone with intelligence, access, and influence, operating behind the scenes? And most critically, where are the jewels now? The Louvre Museum Jewel Heist was not just a robbery. It was a declaration, a reminder that no fortress, no matter how revered, is impervious to carefully deployed human ingenuity and meticulous planning. And as the investigation expanded beyond France into the networks that move stolen treasures into private hands, one truth became clear. This was not a crime of impulse. It was a calculated strike, a masterpiece in criminal execution. Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story. The arrests that followed the audacious Louvre Museum heist offered a fleeting sense of progress. Yet the investigation quickly revealed layers of complexity that would challenge even the most seasoned detectives. The 4 men apprehended were interrogated extensively, revealing fragments of planning and execution, but none could fully account for how the group bypassed sophisticated alarms, motion sensors, and security personnel while simultaneously extracting nearly $100 million in crown jewels without immediate detection. And as authorities combed through their backgrounds, a web of international connections emerged: shell companies, offshore accounts, and travel histories that suggested coordination with criminal networks beyond French borders, possibly reaching into Spain, Italy, and even Asia, raising suspicions that the heist had been orchestrated with insider guidance, if not outright collusion from museum personnel. Although no staff members were formally implicated, and investigators remained cautious to avoid assumptions without corroborating evidence. Meanwhile, the missing jewels became the central enigma, sparking a global manhunt that spanned customs checkpoints, underground auction houses, and online black markets. with intelligence agencies quietly coordinating with Interpol to track any movement of high-value artifacts, while private investigators and forensic specialists attempted to trace digital fingerprints, shipping routes, and prior theft patterns that might indicate the item's new locations. Yet months of analysis yielded only partial leads and tantalizing whispers of treasures cited in clandestine collections, leaving the public and media to speculate wildly about where these priceless objects had vanished, whether they had been broken down, sold to private collectors, or smuggled into an underground international art market. And as coverage intensified, investigative journalists discovered gaps in the museum's security logs that fueled further questions about insider knowledge, particularly in relation to camera blind spots and floor plan changes that only someone familiar with the Louvre's operational layout could have exploited, prompting debates over whether this heist was the work of mere opportunistic criminals or a meticulously orchestrated operation planned over months or even years, with training, reconnaissance, and possibly rehearsals conducted under the radar. As authorities pursued leads, they analyzed communications, payment trails, and travel patterns, discovering anomalies that hinted at a sophisticated network of couriers and intermediaries who could move high-value artifacts across borders undetected. And forensic experts examined fingerprints, fiber evidence, and microscopic residue from the crime scene. But despite advanced technology, recovery remained limited, with only a few pieces returned, raising alarm among art historians and security specialists alike, who warned that even with arrests, the majority of stolen items might never resurface due to the opacity of private collections and the lucrative clandestine market for rare artifacts. And while court proceedings against the detained suspects unfolded, the media captured global attention, with dramatic reenactments, leaked investigation details, and speculation about motives, revealing that the Louvre's security flaws were not merely procedural, but systemic, potentially exacerbated by overconfidence in legacy surveillance systems and reliance on outdated protocols, which in turn catalyzed a worldwide conversation about museum security, the protection of cultural heritage, and the vulnerabilities inherent in institutions entrusted with safeguarding history. Yet, amidst the procedural chaos, investigators uncovered a chilling pattern reminiscent of past high-profile art heists: careful planning, rapid execution, minimal trace, and exploitation of human oversight, suggesting that the Louvre thieves were not an isolated phenomenon but part of a broader evolution in criminal methodology designed to bypass even modern security measures. And as law enforcement agencies coordinated internationally to trace the network, questions arose about the role of technology in both facilitating and combating such crimes. From encrypted communications used by suspects to AI-assisted tracking tools deployed by investigators, creating a high-stakes game of cat and mouse spanning continents. Ultimately, despite arrests, partial recoveries, and a flurry of investigative activity, many mysteries endure. Who were the true masterminds behind the operation? How much did insiders, if any, contribute to the heist? Where are the remaining jewels hidden? Could the stolen items be recovered before they vanish into permanent anonymity? And what lessons will museums worldwide draw from this audacious crime to prevent future breaches? The Louvre Museum Jewel Heist is not just a story of stolen wealth, but a testament to human audacity, ingenuity, and the ever-present tension between guardians of history and those who seek to exploit it. A reminder that even the world's most revered cultural institutions are not immune to human cunning. And while investigators continue to chase leads across borders, the public remains captivated by a narrative that blends precision, mystery, and the haunting question: can stolen history ever truly be reclaimed, or will some treasures forever remain lost to the shadows? Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story.